Hi, this is Gil Robles, and I'm doing something a little bit different here for my sketch. Instead of drawing a sketch of just someone's face, I decided to include the torso and so forth, and just to get in some practice. I guess actually I spent a lot of time on this, partly because you know it's different doing this type of thing on a computer and doing it, in digital rather than doing it in from life, which is what I'm used to. And not that I guess I don't want to come off as making any excuses, but it was a little bit different drawing this. It took me a little bit longer than I had anticipated. So I guess it's more than a sketch, because I imagine the sketch is something that I would spend maybe some minutes on, maybe at most a half an hour, but I invested more time in this than I did altogether. It was about 2 hours. Whatever. I guess from the standpoint of it approached more of a painting than a drawing, then it still would be considered a sketch. Technically, I don't know what it is. It's just me just trying to get used to or trying to get more comfortable with the brushes that I'm using, because this is a pencil I rarely use. But I wanted something that I could, like the pencil tool, unless I go ahead and make a do-it-yourself brush. This pencil tool, I can expand on the size a lot more. But the problem is that it gets really fuzzy the thicker you make the brush, so it loses all that feel of a pencil, and it becomes I don't know what it becomes. It becomes something else. So it gets a little bit harder to be more precise with it. But at the same time, it's kind of like I remember as a kid, I sometimes, because I didn't have anything else around, I would grab a stick and draw in the sand or draw on the ground or wherever there was like loose, wherever the turf was loose enough for me to make marks with. So, and I would just draw, and there would of course be clumsy drawing, because how precise can you be with a stick drawing in the sand? That's a lot different from drawing on paper. And and if you're not just making designs, if you're trying to do a figure, it becomes more of a challenge. So but even though I've got a lot more control obviously in this than I did then, it's still a little bit more clumsy than using a pencil. And one of the things that I don't do too much, because again I'm not used to digital, so my approach to digital is pretty much like approach I have when I'm drawing from life. I don't use the zoom, because there is no zoom in life, and there's nothing wrong if you do. I just it's just not in my thinking when I'm painting, and maybe it needs to be. But then again, what the problem using the zoom is that you zoom in an area where it might not make that much of a difference overall, so you're concentrating your focus on a tiny area, and the problem may be in the big picture, because usually the problem is in the big picture. The problem is designing your drawing, looking at the patterns of light and dark of the big major shapes. You can get away with not putting a lot of detail if the big major shapes are in place, and they go ahead and explain a lot. And usually when there's something wrong with the drawing, there's something wrong with the large shapes. That's why I'm paying attention not to details, but to the patterns of light and dark here. Like, I'm not trying to do every individual finger or so forth, and you know what, I'll get to the details that I figure that are necessary to pull this off, but I don't need to cross every T and dot every I. I'm just needing to put what is necessary for you to be able to read this as a figure. I remember reading and it was a I don't know whether it was a magazine article or some or a post that, where Frank Frazetta was sitting down with someone watching some sport or something on TV, and he looked at something on the TV and where you could barely see this person's face. You can't see the features on the face, but you can tell who it is by the patterns of light and dark. And he said, that's all you need. That's all you need to tell your story. You don't need to get into every detail and so forth. You just need to be able to put down the major lights and darks. And if you look at his paintings, they're not a lot about detail in them. The same thing, but it's not something that he invented. It's the same thing with a lot of the old illustrators. You look at a guy like someone who is not as remembered today is Frank Rodrigo Kruger, and he did a lot of drawings for the Saturday Evening Post, and Norman Rockwell was a big fan of Kruger, and what Kruger did was basically, even though it seemed like his drawings were very detailed, they weren't. As a matter of fact, they were basically just generalized, but he told his story so well, and he put what was important in there so that you don't miss the details, and you assume that he is very detailed by the fact that he put what was necessary. And at one point it seemed like it was detailed, but in actuality he's just putting in the information that you need in order to read that as whatever it is he's trying to he's trying to say. So that's the thing that, if something's off with your drawing. So now I'm using the zoom, which was unusual, and it's a rare thing that I do. But I don't. If you look at it, I'm not zooming in so deep that I'm trying to get a pore or something. I don't know. I'm exaggerating, of course, there, but there are people who need to will feel the need to put in all that detail. Now, and I'm not disparaging their work. I'm not saying that their work is suffering because of it. What I'm saying is that what I am shooting for is to get the big picture right. To get the big picture right, and to not worry so much about the details. The big picture is what carries the painting or the drawing for me. And this is an anatomical study. I just did this. I tacked the reference on my wall in front of my computer, and I'm using it to do this study. But this is more or less just that. It's something that I would do for practice on using the brushes. I went into the brushes library and got a blender that from the library that I liked a lot better than the smudge tools that were available on the brush palette. So, but one of the things, if you have Sketchbook, I would encourage you to go ahead and explore the brushes in the brush library and see what else is available there, as well as you go online on the Autodesk website for Sketchbook. You see that there are also other things, other brushes to download that other people have made that you can add to your library if you feel the need, just to have more choices and more brushes to use. So anyway, I'm pretty much approaching this the same way I do all of the work I do on digital. That is to put the drawing on a layer, and then once I'm satisfied with what's on that layer, I will open up another layer on top of it, decrease the opacity as much as I feel that I need to affect the changes that I want to make. And in the case of this, which is black and white, it's mainly changes in value. I add the value, and this helps with the transition between one value to another, as well as using like I'm using the smudge tool or whatever to go ahead add to go ahead and work out the transitions as well. But those are the two ways I work the transitions between one value to another, and I do that. I darken areas, I lighten areas, and that's how I use my layer editor. If you can see right now, I have a layer opened up. I have the opacity slider a bit more like halfway, so that the changes that I make also include what's underneath. I don't completely cover it, but I make subtle changes to the drawing, so that I sneak up on whatever it is that I want to do. But again, I did this basically to do something different. One, to go ahead and do something more than a portrait, do an anatomical drawing, and to play with the brushes that I don't normally use here to achieve what I want. And it's something that I see that I need to do a little bit more of, especially to develop a way of doing this. To me, I'm just winging it right here. It's kind of like you get yourself into trouble in your drawing, and you're trying to climb. At least for me, I'm trying to climb out of the drawing. It's almost kind of like drowning. You know, I go ahead and I make my drawing, and I see that there are a lot of corrections that need to be made, or I might feel awkward using the tools, and so I'm trying to throw in whatever I feel works at the same time, understanding the experience I've had in drawing from life and drawing from the figure and so forth, and adding that to what I'm trying to do here. So generally it's trying to get used to things and challenging myself to do, like I said, something a little bit more than a portrait drawing, which is what I've been doing a lot. But this, along with what I'm trying to do on this channel, is basically sketching. So I guess even with all of that, I guess the thing is that when you're having trouble, or you feel like you're drowning in the drawing, it's a good opportunity for, instead of throwing it away, to fight for your drawing and try to resolve it as best as you can. Now, that may or may not produce a good drawing, but what it will produce is the experience of having struggled and found your answer, so that you can bring that into the next drawing that you do, and your abilities and so forth would grow beyond your failings, beyond what you were awkward in at first. So pretty much that's it. I'm going to go ahead and finish this drawing. It's speeding up a bit, but one of the things that I want to let everyone know, I have instructional videos on my Patreon channel. So if you want to support this channel and also learn more from me, I have more videos and where I actually slow it down and talk about what I do and how I do it, and how I paint in either Sketchbook Pro or Rebel or whatever software I happen to be using. My approach is pretty much similar. You can use this approach in any, as far as working with the layer editor and stuff like that. The brushes may be different, but you can use this approach in any software. It doesn't matter, as long as you have the layer editor and you have the ability to control the opacity of that layer, and then you have any kind of brush. You can grow used to the brushes that you have. Like I said, there are times when I was younger where I just drew with a stick on the ground and made do with that. So it's you want to get brushes that will work for you and brushes that you feel comfortable with, but at the same time, the brushes don't save your drawing or make or break your drawing. It's your ability that does that. Just like the software is not what it does it. So I'm going to leave the link to Patreon. This is my final drawing, and if you like the video, please go ahead and make comments, let me know, or else hit like, share it, whatever, and thank you. I will be back again with another video. Bye bye.